Oh hi! Welcome to Aquata Zoo, where we like to nerd out over all things zoo and aquarium related. I'm l.semple, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about psychological safety. So first, it seems like it would make sense to define what psychological safety is. It's a state in which people feel comfortable taking interpersonal risks. So dealing with relationships and talking and being vulnerable with one another, it's the option to be able to be more risky with what you're willing to talk about, discuss, put out there for other people to understand. Now, I don't mean in a deviant kind of way. I mean in like the way that I'm going to open up a little bit more about what's going on with my family life, or someone is going to admit when they made a mistake during work, or something like that. There's a risk there that something could come back on you. People might think weirdly of you. People might be judging you for making a mistake. People may blame you for something, right? Like there's risk interpersonally with doing this sort of thing, but psychological safety means that you can do so or do more of that type of opening up without risk of there being that blowback from that type of activity. When it comes to the workplace, we're talking about the people that you work with, the relationships that you're building with them, and kind of your comfort level with being real with them, right? Sharing the things that you don't like, your family stuff, what you did over the weekend, all of those things, not to mention, when something goes wrong, when a mistake is made during work, being able to admit that and come up with solutions together, that is psychological safety, right? It's a place where a lot of people would like to be, and ultimately we all function better that way. Having the ability to say when we made a mistake or say when we're concerned about something without the risk, or as high of a risk, of being judged or have some sort of retaliation upon you for doing so. I have worked in places that have psychological safety, or at least some degree of it, and I've worked in places that have none. I'll tell you, I would rather spend the rest of my days in a place that has some psychological safety rather than trying to sort through and trudge through the workplaces that did not have any psychological safety. It turns into like an emotional war zone in there, right? It's really unhealthy, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this, because if you find yourself in a workplace where there is no psychological safety, things go downhill very quickly and it turns toxic very quickly. So if you find yourself in that sort of situation, kind of start making plans for finding a way out or something like that. Like, you've got to get yourself out of it, because it will suck you in, it will drain you, and you won't be able to do your best work. You won't be very happy at work. Sure, the home life might be okay, but I feel like if you're like me, there's more than likely going to be a little bit of after effect when you're dealing with that kind of a toxic work environment all day long, and then you come home and you're just exhausted. You're not dealing with your family very well. A little bit bleeds over into other parts of your life, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to talk about it today because some people don't realize that you need to establish psychological safety if you're going to have a really healthy work environment with the relationships that you're looking to have with your coworkers, if you want it to be really productive and lots of ideas coming your way and that sort of thing. Really, the optimal work environment does involve psychological safety. We have to take some risks to be able to produce crazy out of the box thinking, right? These things go hand in hand. So if you don't have that in your workplace, maybe you could do something to start making a psychologically safe work environment, or maybe it's time to look for something else. But I just wanted to talk about it so we could discuss what it really means and how it really can impact the work, how you might be able to establish it, and how it can benefit you. If you're anything like me, it's difficult to start establishing work relationships. When you're in a new place, you're in a new organization, you're not quite sure how things work around here, you don't know the people very well. It takes time to develop those relationships, right? And you start off with the small talk, right? You tell somebody the very minimal parts about maybe your move to the area, what area of the town you're in, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, what you like about the organization, questions that you might have about how things work, just general little small talk. As you start developing those relationships, you might get a little bit deeper. You might tell them a little bit more about your family or ask about theirs. You might talk about some goals that you have for your career or your future. And you may inquire about what they also are looking to do. What are we doing here project-wise? What is the end goal? Where do you want to be? Where do I want to be? Like, what is our dream job? What is our dream location? All of those things that are a little bit more personal. And, sometimes we're a little bit guarded with that kind of information. You don't know who you're dealing with. You may not want to reveal what your ultimate goal might be, because it might be, say, to take that person's job. Not that you're going to take that person's job, but to have an equivalent of that sort of position in an organization. Doesn't necessarily have to be this one, but that person could take it that way and just interpret that as you're gunning for my position, and now I have to watch you and I have to stop you, right? There are some people that react that way. It doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe it's all of my work in government entities. You can't take someone else's job like that. Maybe you can in corporations or something like that. But most of the time, if you're trying to get to a certain position, you're not booting the person out that's in that position currently. You have to wait for them to leave, or they'd have to open another kind of equivalent position. That kind of stuff happens. Or you go find that position in another organization. It does happen. So when I say, oh, I would like to be a curator at some point in the future, the curator does not have to hear that and think they're going to take my job and then start acting in a retaliatory manner to make sure that that doesn't happen, right? It's not going to happen anyway, but we generally hope that hearing something like that, like, I want to be a curator at some point in my career, that's A, kind of far down the road, most likely, and B, maybe that's not here. Like, lots of people want to be the next level up, sure, but it's our job as a supervisor or as a leader to try and help them meet their goals within the scope of their job, right? So if I'm talking, since I work in an aquarium, I'm talking to an aquarist who says, oh, I want to be a curator, at some point. That's not me saying, oh my gosh, they're gunning for my job, I need to squash them, right? That's not how to deal with that. I hear that information and I'm like, okay, now I know what you're aiming for. Let me see what you can do in your job currently that can get you moving in that direction, right? Start building that skill set for eventually they could take a curator job. It's not going to be mine unless I'm not in it anymore, which is fine. But like, nobody's going to kick me out of my job and take my job. I am not that insecure. There are people out there who are. But just take that information and now I can use it to help them build some skills that directly work towards that goal. I'm in that position now, so I know what it takes to get there, right? So I might have them, get a handle on their normal work, but then as leadership or team lead or leader of projects positions or opportunities arise, I might put them in those positions just so they can get an idea for how to manage a project or deal with a group of people and getting them all going in the same direction, that kind of stuff, because that direct leadership skill and experience will help that person meet that goal eventually of becoming a curator. So I gave that example of how to deal with this kind of stuff because I've been in places where the psychological safety wasn't there and the reaction was the defensive, they're trying to take my job type of situation. And I've worked with other places that are like, oh, okay, I hear what you're saying. I see your goal. Let's see what we can do and how you can work within your job to still obtain those skills that will benefit that end goal that you're working towards, right? And especially if you can frame that extra, I don't want to say extra work because it's not necessarily extra work, but like that added responsibility that somebody might not be super confident in taking. If you can frame that as part of the skill set that they will need in the future to meet their own goals, like that's a little bit more motivating for them to like take a deep breath and jump in, right? And to challenge them, and they be willing to take on that challenge. So I'm hoping that you see the the differences in the two reactions to the same scenario, as somebody saying that they want to be in a higher level position that maybe you have. You can help them with it, or you can deny them and just basically retaliate against them for telling you something like that. Another place where this tends to show up a lot in the workplace is when people make mistakes. So it's going to happen. We are human and things go wrong sometimes. We forget to check something. Yes, there are people that are more prone to make the same certain types of mistakes more than once. I worked with aquarists who were professionals at overflowing things because they would forget they were filling something. So we had constant floods. And is that the end of the world? Not necessarily. Do we wish that mistake would stop happening? Yes. But I've worked in positions and in organizations where if you made a mistake like that, you couldn't own up to it. You couldn't feel comfortable owning up to it because then you would be blamed and shamed for everything under the sun after that fact. Like, once you have admitted that you're human and you make mistakes, when something goes wrong, you will be the first one blamed, even though that had nothing to do with you. It was not your mistake, and it shouldn't. Blaming and shaming is not part of the solution process, right? But in some organizations, those are tools that they use to kind of start coping with the fact that a mistake was made. And so that is an environment that is completely lacking in psychological safety. So when you're dealing with a psychologically safe environment where mistakes are handled appropriately and that people are encouraged to learn and grow, the mistake is made. We talk about the mistake, and then we come up with ideas for how to prevent the mistake in the future. It's really pretty easy. It's hopefully not that pain-inducing for the person who made the mistake. Like, yes, we make mistakes, and just understanding that the aim here is not to blame or shame the person who made the mistake. It's to come up with solutions so we don't make this mistake again, or we're at least less likely, or we mitigate the risk, like that kind of thing. And so it's a group solution process. And it makes individuals, especially if you made the mistake, feel better about the aim of the organization. It's not to blame and shame and get someone in trouble and fire them. It is to come up with solutions together that will work for everyone. It may not be perfect, of course. We're all human. But maybe we can admit the mistake, come up with a really great solution, and that might become an industry standard in the future, right? When you're able to think outside the box without the pressure of feeling so much guilt, so much shame, burden of the blame, that kind of thing, you can open up your mind to think a little bit more clearly, right? And so that's what we're aiming for with psychological safety. And it's hard to do, especially if you're dealing with like an old school mentality organization that is like, we don't make mistakes. If we do make mistakes, nobody knows about them. We just handle it, right? Yeah, that's an option too, but that just encourages people to keep quiet. So you don't know what's going on in the organization. Leaders may not have the chance to fix problems because the people that they lead are covering it up because that's what they're trained to do. There's no psychological safety there. They don't feel safe. So they just don't admit it. They handle it on their own, however difficult that might be. And they try to just hold on and keep their job and just keep going because they don't have the help that they need to handle this issue correctly. I have worked in this type of environment before, and it is brutal. Listen, there was one time where I didn't even make a mistake, but I was blamed and shamed about it, and a whole company-wide email went out. Anyway, I went to an unoccupied desk to take a phone call, which was like a conference call about a class that I was going to be teaching. I was just starting to teach this class. So it was a conference call with the other instructors across the country, and we were just talking about the content of the class, and I was brand new. This was my very first call with these folks, so I was really just kind of listening. And they were all familiar with each other, and so they were joking and all that while they were talking about the content. And so I was kind of chuckling along with them because it was funny. Like their familiarity, their funny stories about how they convey some of these concepts and things were entertaining. And so I was chuckling every now and again, but I didn't say a whole lot just because I was trying to absorb all the information that I could as the newest instructor for this course. So I went about my call. It was about an hour. And then I got off the call, went about my day. What I didn't realize is that in that same office, it was kind of a group office, but it was quieter than my group office was. And since this desk was unoccupied, I figured it would be okay. I guess I should have asked for permission first, but it was organizational phone, organizational desk. Like, you don't really necessarily need to ask for permission. But anyway, one of the other people who live in that office was in there. And while I didn't disrupt him necessarily, he thought that I was making personal phone calls because I was just chuckling and not, offering a whole lot as far as conversation goes. So he just made the assumption that I was taking a personal call for an hour in there and, talking with my boyfriend or whatever. That's what he assumed that it was. He went to my boss, and then we ended up getting an organization-wide email about phone usage. And I, being the more direct person that I am, and I thought that I had a relatively good, like a cordial relationship with this person that did the reporting on me, I guess. I went to talk to him. I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to interrupt your day, or disrupt your day with my phone call. I told him exactly what I was doing and the fact that I was on this call for this class that I was teaching for work. And he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were just talking, with your boyfriend or whatever. I didn't realize that it was like a work call, and that, he didn't realize, but he also didn't ask. So I guess it was partially my fault for not asking if he was okay with me using that phone in the space that he shared there. But it also was him assuming he knew what was going on with the call. I got in major trouble for this, even though I did nothing wrong, technically. Yes, I could have asked permission. I realize that now. But I didn't at the time because it was a company phone in a company space. I was doing company work. I did not think it was a big deal. I was just looking for a quieter spot than the rowdy mess that was my office, my group office, that had like no walls and stuff. Like, it was just, chaos all the time in there, which was fine most of the time. But when you're trying to have a quiet phone call, it does not work well. So he apologized to me, but then I got in trouble for ages because I dared to use a company phone in a company space for a company work. Oh my goodness. And so that kind of just put another notch on me as a worker, because I dared to make a mistake and there was no way out for me to fix that. I did talk to my supervisor and explain the situation, but at that point the email had already gone out, and he felt like he had to stand by what he had already said without knowing the full extent of the situation. So that basically, what was going on underlying all of that was that the gentleman who had reported me was already in trouble for mistakes that he had made. He was already kind of on thin ice, if you will, with the leadership of our organization. And so it got him mentally to a point where if you see something, you have to say something, otherwise you're going down with that person. So he saw me or heard me make the phone call and made his own judgments about it. Now he knows about it, quote unquote. He thinks that I'm making a personal phone call. And now if he knows about it and doesn't report me, he's going down with me when that gets found out. So as you can tell, this is a very toxic type of reaction and a toxic type of environment. And it did not work out in anyone's favor at all, ever. it was awful. It was kind of one of the last straws where I knew that this organization was not for me, because there was no room for explaining what's happening. There's only room for the judgments of what's going on as it's happening. We're not allowed to make mistakes. If you make a mistake and you see a mistake, you're going down with that person. Like, it was all about fear and punishment, and that's entirely toxic, and it starts with there being a lack of psychological safety. I hope I'm conveying this in a way that makes sense. But so now we know what psychological safety kind of is and how it operates and why it's important, but how do you establish it? The first thing that you can do is kind of do a risk assessment of your own environment, right? What happens if you do say something personal, right? What if you do say, admit that you made a mistake, or if you say that here are your goals and it might involve the either jobs changing or the organization changing, right? If you say this kind of stuff, what do you expect would happen? What's the risk to you, your job, your performance, your relationship with your supervisor or your coworkers? What are the risks there? If you find that you've got high risk there, so if you may admit to a mistake, you know inherently that someone's going to blame you, they're going to shame you, there's going to be a new protocol written, there's going to be a company-wide email, and all of these other steps that are like really embarrassing, and you don't want you really don't want to talk about it, so you just like want to hide your mistakes, then you have very low psychological safety, right? So what you can do to start establishing that is really just to talk with your team and being like, I will be the psychological safety space for you if you need it, right? You don't have to be a supervisor for that. You don't have to be a leader. You don't have to be in a high power situation for that. And it might come across as really like woo woo and huggy and touchy feely and, to some people. But to the people that need that right now, that's going to be kind of a door opener, right? So what you're promising these people that you're saying this to is that they can come to you with their ideas or for comfort or, I don't know, understanding when mistakes are made, and that you are the safe space if they don't have it anywhere else, right? Once you start somewhere, it kind of radiates out. They will be the safe space for other people, and it just kind of meanders from there, right? Once people understand the weight load off that happens when you're not constantly in fear of what's going on around you, what you're witnessing, what you're participating in, and all that kind of stuff. Once that weight of potential blame, shame, etc. is off, people are much more willing to be comfortable, have a good time, lighten up. And it makes for a much safer environment, more comfortable environment for everybody. So if you can provide that listening ear and that understanding without judgment for someone, that's a start, right? The next thing you could do is admit when you make mistakes, especially if you're a leader. If you are a leader, admit when you make mistakes and ask for help in navigating how to prevent that kind of thing in the future, right? You're showing that you're human, you make mistakes. This is how I would like to solve it. So when I make mistakes, we're going to solve it this way. And I hope that when you make mistakes, we can all help solve it this way, right? Basically providing that example for how this is done and encouraging people to speak up. The more that this happens, not saying that the more mistakes that you make, like try to not, but they happen, it's inevitable. But when things happen and we have group discussions with like problem solving and things, people will get eventually a little bit more comfortable with speaking up, especially if people are offering ideas and maybe you as a leader do not agree with them. You're not jumping down their throat about it. Like, how dare you? That's dumb. Like saying things that are really inappropriate in the workplace, right? And really being discouraging about when people open up to you and offer up even crazy ideas. It's okay. You can laugh with them or, explain kindly. Like, I see what you're saying. My concern is this and this and this. Like, you can mitigate those other issues, right? And it might be what leads you to the best idea to navigating this problem, right? Don't necessarily tell people that they're some sort of adjective for suggesting that other adjective idea. Try to be kind and gracious with them, offering you feedback, offering you ideas, and do the same for them. Offer them kind feedback, offer them good ideas, and just turn it into like, it's not necessarily a leader and follower kind of relationship. It's just a coworker kind of relationship. Kind of even the playing field. Just because I'm your supervisor does not mean that I'm the, say the overall say of what happens here. Like, I want this to be something that we all can agree on as the best course of action, or something that we're all willing to try to solve this problem, right? Any kind of like group work you can do, especially with problem solving, makes it more likely that people will implement the change willingly because they were part of that solution making process. They had their say, they had their ideas, they threw their ideas in with all the others, and we've come up with the solution together. They're more likely to be down with that solution than if they were just mandated to do it a certain way because you said so because you're the boss, right? This kind of thing starts small. And if it's just you and your coworker who you trust pretty well and you're pretty sure that the risk is not that bad, just establish it with them. This might sound weird, but I would like to be the person you can come to if you have issues, or if you need help solving a problem. And, I'm going to do the same with you if you're okay with that, right? Just establishing an understanding right there between the two of you is a great place to start. Then they may do it with someone else. You may do it with someone else. And so it kind of grows from there. When people see the benefits of working together and building these really close relationships and finding safety with each other, you can do a lot more. Your brain is freed up. Instead of worrying about what people are thinking or if you're about to be reported, now it has time to problem solve and be like creative and do all the things that we all want to do in our work, right? So you can start small, but if you're a leader, definitely start with, of course, talking about psychological safety and how important it is, if you're comfortable doing that. But start off with admitting when you make mistakes, because you are what they're watching. Your example is the one that's being followed. So if you make a mistake and you can admit it and talk about it openly and acknowledge that maybe you feel really, incompetent in this moment because you didn't think you would ever do this or something like that, right? Being open and honest with your feelings about it, and then not trying to cover it up or make it look different than what it is or anything like that, or jumping down people's throats for coming up with silly ideas to try to mitigate this for the future. Just being open and honest and friendly and kind about how we all together as a group are going to respond to this issue sets a precedent. It shows people that you can make mistakes and it's not the end of the world. You're not going to get in trouble. We're going to try and figure this out together so that it doesn't happen again in the future, right? So it just illustrates with very obvious examples how this can work, how it should work, how you want it to work, so that you can react in a similar way next time when they make a mistake. Now, if we're talking like deliberate issues, that's totally something different and we can handle that later. But just your honest, regular old day, nothing exploded, nothing died kind of mistakes that happen in an office, right? Or in a workplace. Those are okay. It's okay. We're going to talk about it. We're going to work on it. We're going to handle it together. This is a safe space. If you have no other space available to you, you have your space here with me, right? That's what you want to establish, because that's what frees people's minds up to stop worrying about what's going on around them and start just really getting into the work. And that's probably where they're happiest. That's why they're in this job, right? So do what you can to establish some psychological safety, because it benefits everyone. Okay, if you have any questions about that or any other leadership or management things or zoo and aquarium stuff, you know where to find me. You can write it up in an email and send it to me at aquatazoo@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, and I hope that you do, don't forget to follow or subscribe on your podcast player of choice. That way you'll get all of that sweet, sweet content as soon as it releases. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can find me at patreon.com/aquatazoo. And if you'd like to take a vacation and you don't know where to start, particularly for Disney, I specialize in that. I happen to be a personal vacation advisor with Magical Vacation Planner, and I would love to help you out. It does not cost you anything extra. The links are in the show notes. Okay, thanks for listening. I heart your faces. Okay, bye.